Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and I want to welcome you all to a brand new type of review we're going to be trying here. Me and BD Horror. If you don't know who BD Horror is, he's my good friend right here. Say hi, BD.
What's up, people? It's your boy BD Horror, the most handsome Goosebumps reviewer out there, with the second most handsome Goosebumps reviewer out there. A legendary collab indeed.
Oh, yeah. We have a lot to say about the very first Goosebumps episode from the new 2023 Disney Plus streaming show. The first five episodes has dropped as of I guess almost 24 hours ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
getting there, right?
yeah.
Um, and we have since he's watched all five episodes. At this point, I've only watched the first four, and I haven't started the fifth one yet. But we have both seen the first episode, and we have some similar thoughts. And I just want to get this off the chest before we go any further. What we're about to say is just our authentic opinion. This is not going to be reflective to our perceptions of if fans like this episode or anything of that nature. We're not trying to poop on anybody's parade. If you like this episode, that's perfectly fine. We totally condone that and we respect you for it. We understand the magnitude of this new show and what that means for Goosebumps and especially the younger generations. But with that being said, we also have our own authentic opinions, and we just ask that you be courteous to that, and we ask that you be respectful, and please keep the gaslighting pretty much non-existent. We all know how gaslighting can be. If you want to throw up an argument that you think that this episode is better than anything from the original Goosebumps show, don't waste your time. You'll get a thumbs up and a heart from us, and we won't even reply to you. So there you go. With that off the chest, BD, I'm going to throw it to you. What was your initial reaction to this episode?
So, a lot of you guys have probably seen my short in which I basically talk about the first episode, but the first episode, let's just say, did not go over very well with me and a few other people I know. Basically, the way I felt about this first episode. Now, let me give some context real quick. This is how my introduction to the first episode started. I woke up in the morning after having a wonderful dream, all right, as all my dreams are. I wake up and I open up the Goosebumps Discord as a person does, right? Like you want to see what your friends are talking about. Little did I know that I was going to be greeted to 500 messages speaking about the show. And I didn't get through all of it because I don't have that time. I scrolled up a little bit and I saw a war unfold. So then I went to YouTube and I saw another war unfold and then I watched it. What do I think about the first episode? It's bad, yo. It's horrible. I'm sorry. It's terrible. Again, we're talking about the first episode. You will see later on that does not reflect the whole show, but the first episode is horrible. It's plotless. It's got some of the most cringy Riverdale wannabe characters, caricatures of people, and I predicted it. I said you're gonna get that Riverdale garbage dialogue, and guess what happened? Santa delivered. Although I didn't ask this, so this must have been Krampus because this dialogue is terrible, y'all. I mean, the fact that there are writers out there getting paid to say on a piece of paper that they're humping their way to victory and then telling a 27-year-old to say that line with straight face, pure focus, straight face. I'm humping my way to victory. If that doesn't say what this writing in the episode is, I don't know what will. There's a few good scenes. There's one towards the climax that we'll cover later on. I thought that was well done. All right. The characters are forgettable. Any reason that they are memorable are not good. The interactions between characters are cringe. It's forced. Some of the things that they harp on are very sort of just out there. The objects look good for the most part. They're highlighted. Justin Long is good. So that hey, everyone knew Justin Long was going to be the GOAT. He's actually good. But yeah, those are my thoughts. It's all over the place. Most of it is garbage. There's a few lights at the end of the tunnel, but the tunnel collapsed under an avalanche. They're not going to last long. So I'll pass it on back to
Great.
you.
I'm great way of putting your thoughts off the bat. I'll tell you my little story about this. So I'm thumbing around on my phone. It's 3 a.m. I just worked a long shift, and I'm waiting for the show to arrive. And I look on YouTube, and Michael Goosebumps fan had posted a review of episode one. And at the time, I went to Disney Plus, and they only had episodes 3 and 4 uploaded. I think it was a glitch going on. So I went to Hulu. I got rated by ads and started the first episode in a bad mood, knowing that I saw Michael's thumbnail being a pout face in his hand like this, like he's just gotten the worst news of his life. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what it's going to be like. Because if Michael hates it, there might be a chance that I might hate it too. And I go into it, and it starts off fine and dandy, and then I hit some cringe within the first 3 minutes with the fire ghost, with this kid named Harold Biddle, and I'm like, okay, where are we going from here? We get a crap theme song, and I'm like, no, please don't tell me this is the case. This cannot be real. And then we get introduced to the main cast, and I knew that we were in for a whirlwind, y'all, when they have racial stereotypes as the first two characters you meet in this episode. You have a black sports star who has no real goal and opportunity to get into college other than athletics. And then you have a smart Asian girl that lets her friend cheat on her paper. And that's what you get. That's what you get with this. And I'm like, I'm blown away. This is 15 minutes in, and I'm just like, Sony greenlit this? Like, who thought that this was a good idea? Was this script from 1998? Where are they pulling this stuff from? This is like insane. I thought we were past a lot of this, right? And then we get into the heart of the story. We meet all these side characters, and you get to experience Lucas, James, Allison. Allison cannot act. Lucas is completely stupid for the sake of being stupid, and you don't know anything about his character until later on. And like I said, he does get, I think BD kind of alluded to this, he does get a little better, and you'll see that later on. But here, he's not that good. And then you have, I guess, James, which I think is probably the least egregious character here, but I have to say that even the least egregious one here has terrible dialogue. I noticed off the bat, the dialogue does not feel natural. These teens don't talk to each other in a natural way. Margot is probably the worst written character here. She's the stereotypical smart Asian girl. And you see that weird interaction with Isaiah, the jock stereotype. And it's all these tropes just adding on to the bad dialogue. It feels like a dog pile going on. You have cringe, beyond cringe, and then tropes, nothing separating itself from the things that it's borrowing from beforehand. And the little breadcrumbs in the story that are salvageable, there's no explanation to anything going on in this first episode. So it feels like a hodgepodge. It feels like a bunch of just random stuff and nonsense is happening. And before you know it, 33 minutes has gone by. And we're in an episode called Say Cheese and Die. There is no camera, no photos until 33 minutes in out of a 50-minute episode. And that's setting aside this high school party, because this is Goosebumps, right? Because it's always been high school where they're throwing a party with alcohol, passing it around, and a teacher breaks up the party. And we later find out in the episode that the teacher knew who threw the party, which was Isaiah, the prize sports star of the school. And what do we get? He gets a pat on the shoulder and a warning. No logic. A teacher dealing with an underage kid drinking in his own house because this teacher, Mr. Bragg, played by Justin Long, Godspeed that he chose this role, he knew that these kids were drinking in his home and he did nothing. Devoid of logic. And then I think the ending kind of salvages most of it, but that's only like maybe 7 to 6 minutes of the entire 50-minute episode. And I just ended off saying, yeah, this episode sucked. This was just not good. Yeah. I mean, I thought it was just outright pretty much awful in every facet that it could be awful. And if you I'm right there with you, BD. It's not a good episode whatsoever.
And if you want to add oil to the fire, Completionist is still being a little bit vague on some of the specifics. To add to the whole Mr. Bragg thing, Isaiah hands him the key to his own house. So if you were suspecting that he may not fully know that this is the kid who broke into his house, imagine I have the nerve to give you the key to your house that I stole, and he still gives him a pass. And then you find out that he's their teacher. So if you think this guy's a responsible adult, throw that out the window.
Yeah, and that caught me off guard. I mean,
Yeah.
for those of you that have not watched this show yet, if you live under a rock, if you think that this show is targeted to kids,
No.
you're in for a whirlwind. Like I said,
No.
this is not a kids show. This is a show made for young adults. Clearly, from the language to some of the jokes, and let's get into some of the jokes because that's the first thing I noticed with the cringe dialogue. You brought up. I want you to share this. Tell them about James in the mascot costume.
So this I'm gonna paint y'all a picture. Now, if you haven't seen the episode, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's gonna sound outrageous to you. For those who've seen the episode, it's gonna sound equally as outrageous because you got to witness that garbage. Here's what happens. They're at a pep rally, okay? And of course, and I just have to preface this. Of course, the black character has to act like a church preacher to everybody he's within a group of. He does this to his own football team, he does this at pep rallies, and he's specifically speaking like a preacher, like a pastor to all these people. And you have a mascot. And you know, mascots are cool. They're ones that liven the energy. You know, kids are often drawn to mascots, you know, caricatures, characters. This mascot starts humping the air. I'm not even lying to you, straight up. He starts humping the air. And the guidance counselor who's in the crowd has to go up to him and say, James, stop that. You can't be doing that at a school. And he's like, but I'm humping the team to victory. An adult wrote that. Just keep this in mind. An adult that got paid money at Disney, a big established corporation. I'm not talking about Creepshow 3 production. I'm talking about Disney. Somebody said, I'm humping my way to victory. They wrote that on a paper. It got verified by multiple people. It got greenlit, and that was used in the first pilot episode of a big reboot series. That's what happens, people. So if you're sitting there thinking my kid can watch this show, yeah, if your kid likes seeing teens humping the air, making sexual jokes, and just openly doing that in front of the camera and being shown in a comedic light, in a positive light, if you want your kids to see that, that's your own prerogative. Because my God, I was shocked by that. And I want you to take over the Halloween party and what happens in there because there is some jokes made and some activities done that nobody can say this is a kid show. Go ahead, completionist.
All right, so there is a lot of cringe going on in this central plot focus of this episode, which is this Halloween party at this old haunted Biddle house. Now, the details you don't really need to know because I think we're going to try to keep this more vague here. But all you need to know is that all these characters that they have pre existing relationships with before this first episode are in this house. You have Margot, you have James, the guy that was humping in the mascot costume. You have Isaiah, who's the main character of this story, and Isaiah's girlfriend, Allison. And they're all dressed up in their Halloween costumes. And Margot, my God, one of the first things she says when Isaiah goes down into the basement to look around and he finds this camera, which is supposed to be the Say Cheese and Die camera, he comes up and says, Say cheese, and just takes a picture, and it's absolutely cringe. And Margot's reaction is to pretty much call him out for patriarchy. Where is this coming from? It literally comes out of nowhere, and it becomes like it's sending like a political jab for no reason. And I'm just like, why? Why is this in here? And then before that, let's get into before that, okay? So James, Allison, Isaiah's girlfriend, and Isaiah come into this house. And Isaiah puts on his costume. It's a yellow wig, and he takes off his shirt. He's supposed to be Thor. And James looks at Isaiah and says, Hey, you look like you could be on the cover of a porno mag. This is Disney Goosebumps. A porno mag. Do you think little 12-year-old Jimmy knows what a porno magazine is? Whose parents wants to explain that to them? And I guess that's why they had to put TV 14 on this show, but my lord. And it gets even worse. The absolute cringiest moment of this entire episode is during the party, and you see Isaiah decked out in his costume, his little Thor costume, and there's a bagel. And I just don't even want to go any further, but that is absolute nonsense, okay? Why is this in the episode? It just blew me away by how the writing of this episode just went there. You know, there's taste and then there's tasteless. And I don't know if they're trying to capitalize on, I guess, more edgier humor for this younger demographic these days. Hey, I'm almost 30 years old. I'm not 12. I'm not 13. I don't know what kids are saying in middle school, but I don't think these writers know either. Who says that stuff? I mean, have you ever met a person that will dress up in a Thor costume and mess around with a bagel? This is like some Rob Zombie writing from his 2007 Halloween remake. Laurie Strode literally did the same exact thing with a donut. It's preposterous to me. It's so bad. Oh, and that's just the jokes, y'all. We got plot points. We got cringy plot points too, BD. And I want you to start off with a cringy plot point. Name the 3 main contributors to the story throughout majority of this episode and what the deal is with those 3 characters.
Okay. So we're just going to talk about the main characters here. Also, I just want to highlight the fact, too, that Completionists also missed the fact that James at the Halloween party is wearing a BDSM hot cat costume. Take that as you will, folks. And there's underage drinking. So we'll just leave it at that. You leave it to your imagination. But here's the main problem that I really get with this whole entire thing is, first of all, there is bad interaction scenes between the characters. Now, I can fully, and I mean I can fully sometimes let go certain cringy characters because, that might just be part of their character. They may develop, they may grow. But when you mess up the interaction scenes that lead to actual conflicts, it is so cringeworthy. Let's get into the first thing. So Isaiah, he's an athlete. He has to rely upon the scholarship. There's going to be this big game coming up. And if he doesn't do well, if he doesn't get scouted, he's not going to be able to get a full ride at the college that they want to go to. His parents are arguing. He's in a bad place. So he approaches his neighbor. His neighbor is Margot, his best friend. He's known them for a while. They have romantic tension. Romantic tension established, even though he has a girlfriend. So you got to get that mellow teen drama. And y'all, they have their own language. Oh my, they have their own language that apparently they've spoken since they were kids. And that's how they open their conversation. They go, glorp, gleep, glorp, gorp, greep, gorp, gorp, got, gorp, gorp. This is actual dialogue, y'all. They open up with this secret language. Isaiah interacts with her as if he understands everything she's saying, right? They go into this whole thing. He asks her if, she can help him cheat for the test. So that way he can, get past his academic failure right now and be able to still go in the game. Because if he fails his history test, he's not going to be able to play in the game. She agrees. All right, after some back and forth, she agrees. They get away with it because their teacher is this old lady falling asleep in class. Of course, that has to be the stereotypical teacher in the class. They get away with it. And this is where things go downhill, people. The main character, Margot, consented to this. She agreed to it, and after they did it, she said, "Oh my God, I feel so wild. I feel so strange. I've never done anything like this. I'm breaking the rules. I'm a bad girl." And then they go to the Halloween party, and this becomes an argument point. This is an argument point between them where apparently it's revealed to Allison, his main girlfriend, that, this thing happened. And all of a sudden she accuses him again, like Completionist said, of patriarchy. Apparently it's his fault. He's the one who lured her and forced her into this. completely ignoring the fact that she agreed to it. They conversated, planned everything, and afterwards she openly says she was happy that she did it for him. And then when a certain object, if you can't tell by the title of this episode, when a certain object finally comes into play in the episode, 30 minutes into it, in the last quarter of the episode, he tries to approach her, right? Tries to approach her and tries to tell her because they've been best friends since they were young. He can rely on her. He's comfortable with her even more than his own girlfriend. And he goes up to her, he tries telling her, and she yells at him. She says, "All you do is use me. All you do is come to me and only talk to me about yourself, what I could do for you. You never care about me. You never look after me." And this is after he saved her life. This man saved her life. She would have died. Just one scene earlier, she would have been dead. And he saves her life. And he's going through a terrible crisis that he can only trust with her. She doesn't think to herself, "Oh, he's coming to me because he trusts me." No, she's thinking, "Oh, this guy's an idiot. All he does is care about himself." And she walks away. She says, "You can figure it out." She lets her best friend suffer because of two interaction scenes, one of which saved her life, and the other one she consented and felt good about. And then you have, and then you have the teacher, right? You have Mr. Bragg. He has, and God bless Justin Long. He has some cringy scenes. He tries to get into this secret compartment in the house, not able to do it. He gets injured, and the door magically opens because because minor spoiler, I'm not going to say what this scene relates to at all, so I'm gonna hide what the scene relates to. But his blood starts floating, moving across the ground, and enters the lock of a door and magically unlocks it. A door that a construction worker with various tools could not pry open. All right. Again, this is how the plot moves forward. And then the Halloween party, what they do with, we'll just say what it is. What they do with the Say Cheese and Die camera, if you guys are hoping for a faithful adaptation to the book, it's not going to happen, people. It is creative liberty. I'm not going to say exactly what the camera does, but let's just say they've added factors as to why certain things happen, and maybe don't go to sleep and the camera should just collapse, because at this point I think that they alter, like, it doesn't just alter reality. You can enter dreamscapes, you can warp visions, you can do a whole bunch of things, and they just combine three books into one. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the execution of Say Cheese and Die, I've already mentioned this. It took 33 minutes from the start, the cold open, to get to that point where we see the camera in action. That's preposterous. That is almost, and in a 50-minute episode, that is over 60% of your story is facilitating characters and just throwing them in. But the problem with that is, and I think you will even attest to this, they have all these existing pre-existing relationships with each other, and they're done so superficially. You meet these characters so suddenly. You're supposed to be invested, and you're just not. At least for me, and I think it might be for you. I cannot get invested into these characters because all they give us is stereotypes and tropes. Like Isaiah, he's just the struggling athlete with parents that want better for his life, but he has everything riding on that one big game. And it does not help that there's a racial stereotype on top of it. And then you have the smart girl Margot, who's also a racial stereotype in herself. She is a goody two shoes. She's always trying to do right because she's afraid of her mother's wrath, and that's typical stereotypical writing that we've seen countless of times in teen dramas. And I guess they're trying to go for the low hanging fruit to capture the audience because they're you can clearly tell they're just trying to barrel through all these characters to get to the middle portion to set up the camera. But the problem is they have too many characters in this story, in this episode. There's just so much going on. There's no explaining, like the whole blood thing you just brought up. That just literally happens. There's no segue into it. It just happens, and you're like, okay, what does this mean? And I don't even think that the answer we got in the end, by the time that Isaiah gets the camera, makes the blood thing make sense. Why is it there? Maybe it might play a role later in that back half of the season. It seems like it might be one of those shows where you just got to wait for things to make sense.
Mhm.
But as an opening episode, y'all, right? It's a slog. It's boring. It's surface level characterization. And what makes me more pissed off than I probably could have been is the fact that you have this trio of characters. And I try to get BB to talk about it, but I guess I will. Isaiah, his girlfriend Allison, and his best friend Margot. They try so desperately to make you believe that there's a romantic connection with Margot and Isaiah because they have more history. And then you have Allison, who pretty much is non-existent in this episode. And when this girl's on screen, her acting is atrocious. She's having a full-on fight with Isaiah at this party. And she's like, really? Like, she's talking like this. She gets chased in the woods at some point of this episode. And she's just staring at this shadow figure. And she has no idea what to do. She's just standing there and she decides to walk away. I don't know. I don't know this woman in real life. I'm assuming she might be a nice woman. But they needed to reshoot her scenes badly. Like it feels like they took some first takes and just said, "Hey, this is good. This is good enough." No, it's not. It's not good enough. She needs some more care there. Maybe some, cue cards in the back. She needs to be reading off something, reminding her to be more emotional and be less stiff. Yeah, not entertaining. But it's just all this stuff you've seen done in Stranger Things, Riverdale, all these supernatural, young adult, whatever you want to call them, horror IPs. You've seen it in Fear Street. It's no different here. But the biggest thing for me is, and it was made perfectly clear by the point we got around the final 10-minute mark, that at least with the camera idea, they were trying to bring something scary to the table. The
Mhm.
only my only issue with that is it took forever to get there. I
Yes.
mean, it was it's almost the slow burn of slow burns I've come across in watching these shows and experiencing kids horror. Well, I can't even call this kids horror, but it takes so long to get there, and I was pretty much uninvested into it. And like BD said, the camera now has random abilities that they've added liberties to. Also makes no sense. Is this camera magic? Does this camera have powers? I mean, I one can assume if you've read the book, you can probably headcanon some stuff, but even then, I don't think it will solve all those answers.
And the main
Um,
problem, really the main problem with this, you guys, is you'll notice it from our review. We're Goosebumps fans, right? I don't know if you see Completionist's wall right now. He's a Goosebumps fan. I'm a Goosebumps fan. Goosebumps is always focused on the villains. The monsters and the villains will always be the main selling point of the show. How come in the pilot episode 60% of it is just characters and mellow teen drama? There is no structure to this episode because you get introduced to this urban legend. This urban legend, y'all, it barely gets any focus in the pilot episode. And I promise y'all, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. Keep watching the show. You'll find out really how much they care about this thing. It doesn't get any attention. And the main object in the title of the episode has to appear at the very end, and that's why it gets no explanation because there's no time to build it up. They just have to shoehorn it in. How are we going to get invested or care?
and yeah, and it's almost like when you're thinking back on the original book or the episode adaptation from the 90s and how that story in that episode took the idea and at least focused it and went with it, and you saw the camera, you saw what these characters were going through with it. You don't get that sense with Isaiah in the camera in this. You only get maybe 16 to 15 minutes worth of traditional Goosebumps feeling storytelling in the back half of it. Now, I will say this, I will give it this. That football scene with the fire ghost and the arm injury, thumbs up.
good.
that was brutal. That was kind of gory,
That
and
was
that was
good.
kind of terrifying too. I was like, okay, where has this been the whole episode?
Right.
Where has this stuff been?
The camera gets three scenes. That is the only scene that me and completionists are like good. The other two, they are barely even scenes. Those scenes could have been their own thing. And we wouldn't have even attributed it to the camera. That's how forgettable they are.
Yeah, I mean, thinking on some other things. I guess I'll get into some positives because I feel like we've
Yes,
been so negative with it. That football scene I really enjoyed.
me
Okay.
too.
Another thing I really enjoyed about it, I like Port Lawrence, and I like the fact that they did some open world shots and they showed you the general store that's owned by Lucas's mom. I like that they showed you the high school, the Biddle house. You have a bunch of different locations in this episode, and I do think the setting they chose is very spooky. I do get that sense that something is off, and I will say this: they got me with a few jump scares. They got me with a few, and it's cheap, but it's effective. They were kind of silly. I don't want to spoil the exact ones, but yeah, you'll see them when they come. And they got me. They genuinely did. The only thing is, I guess, you know, dealing with James, I think James was my favorite character of this whole episode. At least James was funny. He had like his humor, he had some bad dialogue, but the delivery was still fun. You know what I mean? I just wish that Miles McKenna, who plays James, would talk a little slower, rushing through dialogue. I had to put subtitles on at like 2 minutes in because I could not understand what James was saying. Rushing through, bah, 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 bah. That's what it sounds like. And I'm like, I had to rewind it twice. I said, nah, I'm just going to put my closed captions on. I,
And I think
it's,
that especially happens when Isaiah and James are interacting with each other. There's a few scenes at that Halloween party that I didn't turn on subtitles, but I just filled in what they might have said. I didn't remember what some of their sentences were.
and also, to Isaiah's character, right? He might be kind of stock, but
Right.
I do think that he does have some emotional weight on his back. He feels like he's carrying the world on his shoulders, and I think that is relatable. And I can definitely see from a kid's perspective that that's kind of how they feel. Everything is trivial, everything means the world, everything is do or die to like a 13-year-old kid. And Isaiah literally comes across like that as a high schooler. My only issue with that is that you get scenes where after he first acquires the camera, he's had the camera in his possession where he knows where all these things are going on with the pictures for a collective maybe of 5 minutes of story. And he's completely lost it and has a conniption fit with his friend James. And I'm like, man, you just lose your calm so quickly that you just need to calm down. I felt like Isaiah just got a little extra in parts of the episode, and going back to him and Mr. Bragg's altercation together in the lunchroom, where
Mm.
he's just chilling there, and you can clearly tell that he's been caught red-handed, and he's trying to play it cool. Mr. Bragg just lets him get off the hook. You get this sense that maybe this Isaiah kid has been given a lot of things in his life too, and that kind of makes me question his validity of a character in some ways. Like, he gets everything he wants, but then he has to work for this. So, he's given special treatment. Where are they going to go with this? I mean, I don't want to get into episode 2, 3, 4, or 5 at all because that does clear up some things. But this is the first introduction, right? This is all things that you have to take in as they come. We're not saying this just to bring them up like, oh, we're trying to be nitpicky or anything. No, this is just how they present it to us. We don't know anything else about Isaiah other than he's a star athlete. He gets some special privileges from the teachers and the guidance counselor, and he's riding on this scholarship. And he has a close friend with his friend Margot that helps him cheat on a paper, and he has a girlfriend that is jealous.
Yeah. And you know
I
what?
mean, it's
The show does have positives too, but I think it's more so in the fact that the show has a lot of potential. And you do get glimpses of that potential because the things that I have to commend definitely about this episode, because we've mostly been trashing on it, but there are good things in it. The ones that completionist mentioned are 100% true. And also, there is actually a good set of actors in this show, but it's not where you would expect. All of the adult characters are actually good actors. The interaction scenes they have, the emotional dialogue they have. I have to give a big shout out to, I believe, Lucas's mom, who runs the main cafe, which is in Port Lawrence. She does a really good job with her lines. For those of you who don't know, she was in Diary of the Wimpy Kid as the mom. Here, she does a great job. Isaiah's parents do a fantastic job. You get to see this interaction scene that builds up sort of what might be going on in Isaiah's life behind the scenes that might be kind of adding pressure to his future career. They do a great job with that. Mr. Bragg, he's got charisma to him. He's funny. He's goofy. You can kind of resonate with him. And I think the biggest strength in this show that I think lays down some potential for why it's kind of mixing the adult and childish parts of R.L. Stein is that you get some mystery. Just like Fear Street, where you have teenagers involving mystery, this is the first time that we get a Goosebumps IP with that sort of idea, where they're investigating this urban legend. There may be multiple ties to it. There may be a lot of people involved within it. And I think it does a good job overall with the setup in that. So I think that that's a part that a lot of people will enjoy is that you get mystery. And on top of that, you do get some good emotional impact in this episode in the few parts that it's there.
Yeah, in the few parts, I think the Isaiah and his father relationship that kind of sends it home and near the end, and I do kind of start backing Isaiah more than I did the first half of the episode.
Mhm.
So yeah, there are some positives. Like you already brought up, the acting from the adults are for the most part fine. Justin Long, Rachel Harris. I even like the actor who plays Isaiah's dad, and he looks familiar from something, and I want to put my finger on it. But he came from something in the '90s that I've watched a lot. He might have been in Are You Afraid of the Dark? I don't know, but yeah, he looks eerily familiar. And some people might in the comment section might be able to say, because I haven't looked on IMDb, I haven't had time to before this review. But I'm assuming that he was in some stuff that I've seen. But he was good too. I mean, it's not all a wash. I think Miles McKenna did a great performance as James. Like I said, I think that's part of the reason why I clicked with James so quick is because of the charisma from Miles. So like the line delivery just sold me more with his character. Now Isaiah's not a bad actor either, and we've already talked about Allison's bad acting, and I don't think that Margot's a bad actress. I just think her dialogue and her character is just written very poorly. So, um, it's all balanced, kind of, when I think of the characters here. There's a lot to like, a lot to not like. So I find myself in the middle with everything, when it comes to that. But just the main issue with me for this episode, I think, comes down to the dialogue and the execution of the idea of it being called Say Cheese and Die, and you get a collective less than 20 minutes of a 50-minute episode with the camera is egregious to me. It feels like it takes forever to get there, and you have to go and sift through a lot of cringe. I mean, you'll attest to this. How many times did you cringe in this episode? I mean, it is unfathomable.
For each time I blink in this review is how many times I cringed in the episode.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna let you say what you're gonna grade this thing. I'm assuming it's not gonna be good though, even though you did have some sound positives there. What would you rate the first episode, Say Cheese and Die, of the new Goosebumps
So
show?
the biggest kind of saving grace to this episode for me was personally the football scene. Football scene is one of the few redeeming things that really prevented this episode from getting a super low egregious score. So, with the football scene included and a few of the aspects I liked, this episode gets a whopping 3.5 out of 10.
3.5. Oh, so on a 5 point scale, that's a 1.75. Ooh. So
1.7.
what letter grade would that be?
That would be F minus.
F minus. I'm right there with you, man. I'm gonna be upfront. I'm gonna say my piece here. I hated this episode. I thought it was just the most unnecessary thing I've had to sit through. One of the weakest first episodes I've seen in quite a long time, and it gets ironically mildly better in the next episode, but I hate a lot about that more. And
Yeah,
we'll get into that in our own reviews on our own channels, right?
yeah.
But I hated this thing. I thought that it was just poorly done. There's hardly any real plot going on. It's teen melodrama, cringe dialogue, surface level characterization, questionable decisions with some adults in logic. You had terrible writing of the Margot character. I don't care what people say. She's atrocious in this episode. Lucas, why is he even in this? He's playing Johnny Knoxville on the roof of his mom's business, and then he just ups and disappears until the party. I mean, he's just a buffoon for the sake of being it. And it doesn't get good until like the final 7 minutes, y'all. And
Yeah.
what's the point? 50-minute episodes. That's also another gripe I want to bring up before I give my rating. The 50-minute episodes, no
Too
bueno to
long.
me.
It's too
Too
long.
long, way too long.
Way
I was thinking maybe 40, maybe 42, 44 minutes. But they're adding so much extra, right? And I'm not even talking about the outro song to this too. Now that I think about it,
Oh, we
they
need to
played
talk.
they played the Travis songs at the outro, and I was like, nope, that's just an extra cherry on top of the turd Sunday.
Let me just say this. There was a video going around on the internet talking about the new Goosebumps theme song, and I listened to it and I was like, you know what? This sounds pretty good. I think it's gonna be pretty all right. The new Goosebumps theme song is the regular show fart sound. You know regular show, right? That
Yeah,
blah. It's one piano note. That's your Goosebumps theme song. And like Completionist said, we were all afraid. And I'm guilty of this. I thought Travis Scott was only going to be for the trailer. Nope, it's in the outros.
it was an outro of this episode. I didn't see it
This
in some other
episode.
ones, but
No,
they had to just throw that in there on the first one to throw some salt in the wound for me.
yeah,
So that's a personal thing. I have nothing against Travis Scott. It's just the song makes me cringe a little. It's not my speed. It's not Jack Lentz. It's
no.
not Goosebumps.
And the 50-minute thing you said, some of y'all might not know what Completionist is talking about since, of course, it's the first episode. You're going to be very kind of invested to see what happens. When y'all get to episode 3 and 4, you will feel the length. Trust me, it'll
Yeah,
start
yeah,
kicking in for you. If you binge this show, which I mean, I binged it, for example, a lot of guys that I know, completionists and others binged it. When you start getting to that episode 3, 4, 5 mark, you really start to feel the runtime because you will feel like you watched a whole episode and there will still be 25 minutes left of a whole other subplot. So it's very long feeling.
yeah. And that's another thing I can throw in there. I mean, it just kind of shows to me why they dumped the first 5 episodes. I guess maybe it was potentially looking at a lack of faith with what's going on. I'm hoping they're holding the cards for the second half of the season. I really am. But this was just not the best to start with. Honestly, I'm kind of speaking ahead of myself. I've seen episodes 3 and 4. I would have much rather seen that be
Yeah,
the starting point and be
yeah,
disappointed halfway through this first batch of 5 than just immediately being like, what am
yes.
I watching?
The show does get better, y'all. There's some
It
points
does.
where it
It
gets
does.
better. So don't feel for any of you out there that feel like we're completely speaking about the whole show. Absolutely not. This is just a pilot. It does get better. However, please be patient because the beginning will be rough. I promise you that. But it will get better. It'll improve a little bit. So just be patient, y'all. Be patient.
Yeah, and I was so hyped for this too, and I just don't feel like they did Say Cheese and Die justice for
No.
me. And as a fan, I just feel a big letdown because Say Cheese and Die was one of my childhood favorite books, and I thought this one would have been a slam dunk easy one to pull off great, and they didn't really do it. So,
And it's strictly only with this episode. The other episodes cover the objects and other titles in full runtime. So only this one, sadly. So for all of you Say Cheese and Die fans out there, I apologize ahead of time.
yeah, yeah. So like with that being said, if I'm looking at it from like a pragmatic point of view, I can say this episode is fine, but the only reason why I put it lower and I hate it is because it does nothing new, it does nothing different, it does nothing to shake up any formula that it's taking from. and the writing is bad. And that was my biggest concern. I said it on the podcast. What was my biggest expectation? I wanted good writing. And the first episode, they give me bad writing. They're already at strike one for me personally, especially after strike, we're not even into strike two yet. I'm going to get into that in its own review of the Haunted Mask episode two. Full warn, I'm pulling off the gloves. Okay? I'm coming in with the 1-2 KO jab through the showrunners who greenlit this. I'm coming after you. That being said, this episode is still not good whatsoever. It's terrible in my opinion. I'd probably give it like since I don't do exact points for my F tier, I'm gonna give it a 1.5 out of 5 stars, which is like a 3 out of 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. That might sound really low to a lot of you, but I think I'm being fair because I was not given anything here that I haven't seen before or anything worth my time other than the final 6 minutes in a 50-minute episode. And I keep reinstating that, but I'm going to say it one last time for you in the back rafters. It's a slog. There's nothing going on in this episode. You can pretty much skip till the final 10 minutes. I'll save you the time. The next episode recaps all the core points in the beginning of the Haunted Mask episode. You'll thank me later.
You can skip 25 minutes of this episode and be perfectly fine.
Yeah. That's our thoughts on the new Goosebumps show, episode 1, Say Cheese and Die. Thank you, BD, for coming on. I'm going to put a link to your channel and all of your information in the description of this video and in the comment section. And we both ask all of you in the comment section, what did you guys think about this first Goosebumps episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you in the middle with it? What do you guys think about this? We want to know and we want to talk with you all. We hope you have a great day and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Deuces.